what are we going to do today? We're going to share with you some results about a study, a case study in legacy media in French-speaking Belgium, and we focused on newsrooms, so print and web newsrooms in French-speaking Belgium. But just for you to know, just to give you some information about the landscape, French-speaking Belgium has a very particular landscape because it's a very, very small media market with less than 5 million people and a great penetration of the French news market. So this is quite complicated. And plus, there is a media concentration. We've been hearing this word a lot today. So here we have a clear case of media concentration with two main groups, Rossel and IPM, which own each of which owns a quality newspaper, at least a popular or local newspaper, and for Rossel, a financial newspaper, and for IPM, a local newspaper. This is very important because it means that there is a certain threat to pluralism. And on the other side, there is also a very important problem of business models, which are under pressure. So here, the use of generative AI becomes not only an ethical question and an ethical issue, but a really important problem in terms of efficiency, in terms of gain of people at work every day. So what we wanted to do with our study, we wanted to analyze how and which self-regulation systems could be implemented within the newsrooms. So we just focused on the newsroom, on the 6 newsrooms we decided to analyze, and we wanted to know how these systems were ensuring accountability or not. And we adopted for that an inductive method, an inductive approach, which was based, first of all, we made a thematic analysis of the ethical guidelines in the newsrooms. And what was interesting is that one media group decided to share their norms, their ethical guidelines, but the other group, in the first place, at the very beginning of the study, they said, yes, we can share them with you. And then the latest version of the ethical guidelines, they declined to share with us because it was strategic content and they didn't want to share them with researchers. So just that, it gives you maybe an idea of how touchy is this question today. And then we made some semi-structured interviews in the 6 daily newspapers. And we decided to interview both the editor-in-chief and the editors or managers that were responsible for innovation and generative AI. And we did the interviews between December 2023 and November 2024 with the second round in September, October 2024 to update some information. So as a theoretical framework, our main idea was to base the study on the concept of media accountability and media accountability tools. So here we can share the reference after that. But we started from the media x-axis model, and as you can see, our focus was just on the newsrooms level because we found that some tools, some accountability tools were actually implemented, especially media journalism training, sometimes letters to the editor, as we will see, but most of all, we had some ethical guidelines that were considered as the main and the most important tool to ensure accountability within the newsroom.
So based on this framework, we worked on the market accountability, which operates at the newsroom level. And however, in one of the analyzed newsroom, we even observed an attempt to incorporate public accountability by engaging audience Nonetheless, our main emphasis was on the dissecting professional accountability. So we examine here who participates in what and what stage when it comes to ensuring theoretical ethical standards. The first observed accountability mechanism is collaboration. Clearly, in development of the ethical framework. So working groups are generally interdisciplinary, as seen at Glossoir, whereas at IPM, ethical decisions are made collectively by all stakeholders. According to the interviews, news executives perceive a significant increase in collaboration between editorial, IT department, and business department, with the IT department becoming more and more important for digital media innovation over time. Furthermore, the interdisciplinary collaboration involves drafting ethical charters, serves as an accountability tool in itself, embedding ethical consideration into the process. So, in some cases, newsroom managers take what we call a top-down approach, driving rapid development with minimal input from journalists. So this method prioritizes efficiency, but it risks alienating staff. And conversely, a more inclusive approach, what we try to show with this arrow, it's what we call a bottom-up approach. And this model emphasizes consensus building and recognize the interconnected nature of AI with other departments, such as marketing and finance. Regardless of the chosen method, iterative feedback is always on the loop. So it's a common feature, and it's ensuring adjustments are made as new insights emerge. So the next accountability tool we observed is the evolving process that follows a common framework. So here we have the different steps we observed. First, the designated AI committee undertake a period of research and observation. So it's a really important phase because it's allowed to understand both the capabilities and the limitations of AI tools in journalism. And following this, the committee begins drafting ethical charters, which serves as a foundational document guiding AI use. So we also observe an increased emphasis on continuous training, what is the last step of this process. And interestingly, training programs for newsroom staff often begin before the finalization of the ethics guidelines. But this dual track approach functions as a key instrument of professional accountability. Because it not only ensures compliance with ethical guidelines, but it also fosters a sense of security and reassurance for all the staff. It's really it's a security for all the staff among journalists as they adapt to new technologies. So these two elements of training and evolutivity appear in all ethical charters and are principles endorsed by all stakeholders. And the notion of adaptability is closely tied to innovation and the ever-evolving nature of AI as a technological tool. Training is also explicitly mentioned as a fundamental principle, which can be interpreted as a commitment to strengthening professionalism. The last accountability tool we identified is media reporting, as it allows media outlets to publicly position themselves on issues related to AI development and to inform their readership. And it is specifically true for media with an editorial line focused on innovation and technology. So this is what LECO refers to as the democratic duty to inform about AI. And LECO is, in fact, the only media outlet that explicitly references media reporting in the chat. Yeah.
And so what we also found is that the ethical guidelines that were considered as the main tool for journalists, actually, in the interviews, we perceived that they could have different functions. So they were both an accountability and a liability tool towards the public and towards the peers as well. But at the same time, they also were a certain reassuring tool from the editors and the managers toward the newsroom. So I can detail more in the afterwards, but what we can say is it's also that these guidelines serve as a sort of boundary setting tool. The idea being that if we have guidelines as journalists, we are showing our public and the authorities and our peers that we are doing a good job, that we know the benefits and the risks of generative AI, so we are doing it responsibly in a responsible way. But that's what they say. When we analyze the ethical principles, however, we found that the reality was even more complex, because when we analyze the principles that were applied to AI, we've seen that there was no explicit reference to truth. However, they referred to accuracy and truthfulness, to avoid manipulation of videos, of image, of information. And the main principle addressed, the most common principle addressed, were transparency and the human in the loop. While other principles and values were mentioned, but in a very, very general manner. That was the case for respecting copyright and privacy and bias mitigation. But even in the interviews, especially the editors in chief weren't able to explain to us how they would implement it, which is kind of interesting to, because it seems really performative. Like, we have this,
Yeah.
then we don't know what we're going to do, but check, we have it. And so finally, we also found that some principles are not mentioned at all in the guidelines. We're talking about a system of control mechanisms within the newsrooms, and the human cost and the environmental cost and impacts of AI. So as for checks and balances, here again, everyone was saying, no, but our charts are going to be, we are going to modify them in 6 months, in 1 year. And we were asking them, okay, but how are you checking if your journalists are actually applying these principles? Oh yeah, we don't know. We will just see, and we will see with the press councils if we have any complaints. So they're not checking inside. And as for the human and environmental impact of AI, most of them actually admitted that they hadn't think about that. So it was just very strange for them that we asked the question. And some of them, however, said, yeah, we thought about it, but the main answers were two. Thank you. The main answers were two. So first of all, it's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to inform the public. So this is our democratic duty, to inform the public about the risks of generative AI. But in the newsroom, this is a huge revolution. So we just have to implement it, and then we will think about the costs. And the other answer they said very frequently was also, it's not our responsibility as a newsroom, but it's a responsibility of the media group. So the media group has to think about it. So we don't know who is responsible for that in the end. And finally, we just wanted to make a focus on transparency, but we can talk about it later. But transparency was seen like this magical word, both in the guidelines and in the interviews. If we have transparency, we can do a lot of things. And for them, for people we interviewed, transparency was both internal, so within the newsroom and the media group, and external, so towards the public. And so in two cases, the newsroom invited readers to share their questions to a dedicated email address. So maybe a path for future research is to see if there will be interaction with the public, because in that case, that would mean that we have a real construction or attempt to build a certain public accountability. And finally, and this is an open question that we can discuss about, we found in the newsrooms that there are some tasks for which you need transparency and for which you don't need transparency. And so it's pretty clear here in these tables. However, one gray zone, as I can say, is the writing assistance, because because in some newsroom they were saying, at least as we have a human in the loop and we have a human control at the end of the production, we don't need to be transparent. Whereas for other editors in chief, especially, it was not so clear. So maybe this is also another thing that we might want to explore in the future. So here are the main takeaways of the study. So the collaboration, the importance of training, the use of ethical guidelines, and still an open question about transparency. And thank you very much for your attention.